We're going to start out this week. I've been trying to get out of Galatians 5 for the past few weeks. So we're just going to wrap up that and hopefully get to where I kind of want to go today, but we'll see. I'm just going to start in verse 22 because I think that's kind of where we ended out. I'm in the Message Bible though, so. Galatians 5, 22. And it starts out with we were in this last week. This is where I believe we ended off. But it's cool because it says, what happens when we live God's way? That's how he starts, right? What happens when we live God's way? Right? And he goes on the list of things that happen, right? He brings gifts into our lives. Much the same way that fruit appears in an orchard, things like affection for others, exuberance about life, serenity. We develop a willingness to stick with things, a sense of compassion in the heart, and a conviction that a basic holiness permeates things and people. We find ourselves involved in loyal commitments, not needing to force our way in life, able to marshal and direct our energies wisely. Right? We spend a lot of time directing our energies in the wrong focuses, the wrong areas. We waste so much time on just things that don't matter, right? But if you live a godly life and you let him direct you, he helps you focus your energy on what's true, like what means something, right? Legalism is helpless in bringing this about. It only gets in the way. Among those who belong to Christ, everything connected with getting our own way and mindlessly responding to what everyone else calls necessities is killed off for good, crucified. Right? We did our yearly little sleepover for our youth group this weekend. You can probably tell I'm still recovering. But it's amazing what these kids think are necessities, right? No joke, I'm not calling out parents, but parents came back and drove to drop off necessities for one night. And just kind of like put that in perspective, like what do we think is a necessity? There's only one necessity, and it's Jesus. That's all you need. Right? We tried to hammer that into the kids, like you have one necessity, and it is just Jesus. He's given you the Spirit to help you. You don't need anything else, right? So we've got to overcome these earthly necessities that we think we need because we waste so much energy trying to attain these things that we think we need when we already have what we need. That's the problem. Like my whole point is, I think where Kelly Varner is going with this book is deception is real, right? We are so deceived that we think we need these things that don't really matter. And we spend so much time trying to attain those things that we truly miss the purpose and the reality of where he wants to take us. Right? It's all vanity, right? Where was I going? Okay, so. Right, but if you live the old way, that's all you're going to be focused is on, the necessities. But if you live his way, you know you have all that you need, right? And you let him guide your path. So this is the kind of life we have chosen, right? We choose this life, the life of the Spirit. Let us make sure that we do not just hold it as an idea. That's the problem, right? We sometimes hold this life as an idea. We all have great ideas, right? Every single one of us has great ideas, but sometimes we just sit there and we just think on it and we don't walk them out, right? Tomorrow I'm going to go to the gym. That's a great idea. It's going to build muscle. It's going to make me healthy, but tomorrow comes and we don't do it because we get distracted by something else, right? So don't just hold on to it as an idea in our heads or a sentiment in our hearts, but work out its implications in every detail, right? That's the key right there. Like we do work this out. We do walk this out. But he's saying here, walk out everything. Walk out those little things that we don't like to walk out. The details, right? We talk about the details all the time. I hate the details because the details mean more work, more focus, right? It's got to be perfect. And guess what? If you mess up on the details, it's going to cost you something. I learned that when I was trying to do crown molding in my house recently. I learned that it's not cheap. It's not easy to cut. And it's a pain. Ask my wife. I think I became unsaved when I was trying to figure out how to do it. Like literally, I almost threw the saw into the trash can. It was just painstaking. So, but those are the details, right? The details are not an easy thing to do, and we don't like the details because it's going to cost you something. But when it's complete, right? God's finished work, when it's complete, because it's complete, it's a beautiful thing to look at, right? So then at the end, you're like, oh, it was worth it, right? So when God brings you through and you allow him to take care of those details and you see the finished product of what he was doing in your life, you're like, wow, God, it was worth every single thing I had to go through to get to here. I was saving that for you. Let's see. This means we will not compare ourselves with each other as if one of us were better and another worse. We have far more interesting things to do with our lives. Right? Think about that part of this part of Galatians that he's wrapping up, right? That means we will not compare ourselves with each other as if one of us were better and another worse. There are far more interesting things to do with our lives, right? So many people get caught up with comparing themselves to the person next to them. You can't do that. Right? Because he's dealing with the church, right? Let's make sure he's not dealing with the world because the world's already messed up. He's dealing with the church here. This happens in the church, where we sit here and we look at the person next to us and you get caught up with comparing yourself to that person. Right? But if we just had that mindset and we saw the finished work in that person next to you, you wouldn't be caught up comparing yourself to that person. And then he just finishes it off in the message. He's like, each of us is an original. Thank God, right? But that's just amazing. That's how amazing God is. There is no one like you. This is an amazing thought. Like we went to this bagel place over here that everybody loves. It just opened up this morning, and it was crazy in there. And I was thinking about this. I saw all these people, and I was like, "Wow, God!" And we all know that there's not one identical person on this planet. But just all those people in there, I was like, and I was thinking about it, I was like, that's just amazing how not one single person in this place is the same. Except for what dwells inside is what completes it, right? There's a hand right there. Yeah. You were sleeping. You were probably still sleeping. I'll bring bagels next week, okay? Hey, they're playing games in like the teenager. I saw games come in. We're going to play like Yahtzee next week or something. But yeah. Kelly has some notes here. He says, in this age of relativism, I think I said that right, where everything, especially morals, are private, personal whims of each man, our only hope is the Bible, the inspired word of the living God. In spite of what secular humanism says, there are absolutes. There are values that are right and wrong, right? Because man doesn't think so, right? But the Word, right? We know that the Word is an absolute. It is the truth, right? We're dealing with deception again, right? Deception is trying to deceive you into thinking something different than that. He goes on to say, in the light of the Scriptures, all gray areas polarize into righteousness or sin, wheat or tares, Christ or Antichrist. If there is no measure, canyon or rule, then we are doomed to pluralistic anarchy. Right? There's got to be a measure. I think we said it last week. There's got to be that standard. Without that standard, right? Jesus, that's the standard, right? The anarchy of the world that we see each and every day will continue to grow. And the crazy part is it's going to continue to repeat itself. So without Jesus as the standard in the church, right? If he's not the standard in the church, the problems are just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. He's got to be that standard. And that brought me to, where did it bring me? He's got Hebrews 12:1 in here. I'm just going to read through this quickly, because I do have a point I want to get to today. I hope I get there. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, who by faith have testified to the truth of God's absolute faithfulness, then I just kind of stopped right there, right? That word witness means one who gives an account of the facts, right? So if you're a witness of God, right, you've got to know the truth to be that witness. And that word also is, in the English, it's an origin of the English word martyr, because early Christians who testified about Jesus, we know this, have faced death for their accounts, for their truth, their facts, because they, but they are witnesses to us of faith and endurance, stripping off every unnecessary weight and the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us. Right? And we've heard this all, like sin will definitely hold us back. Your mindset will definitely hold you back. It will weigh you down. And then there are also those little hindrances that may also keep us from running effectively. Then Paul goes on to say, let us run with endurance and active persistence the race that is set before you. But if we take a look at this, right, what's cool about it is the fact that he says, he doesn't say you go out and run by yourself. He says, let us run. Right? And that's important to know, that you're not running alone. Because if you're running alone, it's actually harder to run alone than when you're running with a group of people. Right? Because if you're running alone, things start to get into your mind that just, your mind starts to deceive you, and it tells you to quit. Yeah. Right? And I'm like in the natural, like if you go for a run, it is a lot easier when you go with somebody else, because that person is usually encouraging you, or you're running together. Like you're not going to quit because that person is still going. Versus if you're alone, it's easy to stop running because your mind is telling you, you know what, you're tired, this is too far, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why it's cool that he uses the word us, because it's plural. It's more than one person running with you. And it's actually more fun, too. It's more fun when you actually run with somebody else versus running alone. Just from experience, too, like me and Sage have run a couple races, and there's really, honestly, no experience that, at least that I've experienced in the natural, to going to a place of gathering where you have all these people running in a race headed for same direction, trying to attain the same goal. Right? But they're running together in unison. Yeah, some are a little faster than others, but there's just something. But you got to put that in the perspective of the church and how he's calling this a race. If you run together with the same goal in mind, it's going to be a lot easier to attain that goal versus trying to do it by yourself. Let's see. But we talked about this before too. It involves effort and it involves commitment. Endurance translated in the Greek is the word hupomone, hupomone, I believe, and that which does not mean the patience which sits down and accepts things, but patience which masters them. It's a determination, unhurrying and yet undelaying, which goes steadily on and refuses to be deflected. So that's what endurance means. Refuses to be like, you've got to be determined in this walk with God, right? Because you know the goal, you know where you're headed, and you know you're not doing it alone. And sometimes what trips us up is we focus on the course too much, right? Like if you're going to go for a run on a race, right? You normally will look at the map of the course, and you'll be like, oh, shoot, that's long. Or, wow, there's some big hills there, right? But God is saying, don't focus on the course. I took care of the course, right? Just focus on me, the endurance piece, right? He's the one that's going to get you through. Because verse 2 says, looking away from all that will distract us and focusing our eye on Jesus. Right? You've got to be locked in on him. He's the focus. He's the inspiration. He's the example. Right? Because like I said, if you go back to like focusing on the course, sometimes that course will trip you up, depending on where you're running. Because if you're running a race through the woods has got things there that are going to try to entangle you, right? That sin piece that will trip you up. That's why you can't focus on the course. You've got to focus on the prize. You've got to focus on him. Let's see. And in the Greek, the word focus or look means aphoreo, and that means to look intently or turn one's gaze away from everything else to focus on one thing. Right? Sometimes, even in the previous in Galatians, right? He said, don't compare yourself to the person next to you, because that can happen too when you're running the race, right? You can focus on, like I said, you can focus on the course. Don't get caught up looking at the runner next to you, because that will trip you up too. Because you're like, wow, look at this guy. He knows so much more about you, Lord, than I do. And that could cause you to just stumble and fall, right? Just focus on him. Focus on Jesus. And then it goes on to say, who's the author and the perfecter of faith, the first incentive for our belief, and the one who brings our faith to maturity. And what's cool is he's at the start of the race, right? He runs the race with you, and guess what? He's at the finish when you cross the finish line. So he's not just at the beginning. I think Ron talked about that last week. He's not just in front of you. He's all around. He's at every stage, every level. Who for the joy of accomplishing the goal set before him endured the cross, disregarding the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, revealing his deity, his authority, and the completion of his work. Right? Think about that. Jesus, he didn't focus on the horror of what was going to happen on the cross, did he? No. He focused on the finished work. And that's the same mindset that that we've got to put on, right? Because that's the mindset that will help you endure. Because if we focus on the pain, the struggles, whatever else comes with that we don't like, it's going to trip you up. Verse 3, just consider and meditate on him who endured from sinners such bitter hostility against himself. Consider it all in comparison with your trials. Our trials are nothing compared to what he went through, right? So that you will not grow weary and lose heart. I'm going to continue on. So for a few pages in the book, and I didn't want to get into it all, but Kelly really goes on to deal with, he just deals, I don't know if you guys have the book or not, but he just really hits hard on the gay issue in America. And this is like 30 or 40 years ago, and just it's a spiritual issue, right? but he really brings it into the natural and how it just is affecting society and everything, even in the church, right? He's dealing with the church here. Kelly is dealing with the church, right? But just think of where it was 30 years ago to where it is today and how crazy it's gotten, right? Because he's dealing with the chapter, he's dealing with unnatural affection. And that issue, it's not natural because that's not the way God designed it to be. And then he deals with the repercussions because of the lust of the flesh, right? We all know man is a beast. Adam's a beast, right? And man, Adam will do anything to satisfy the flesh. You know, we're all adults, We're all adults. It's adult Sunday school. We're not playing Yahtzee like the kids are downstairs or whatever they were doing. I'm just kidding. But it's true, right? Man will do anything to satisfy the lusts of the flesh. He goes on to talk about he asked this question. Is there conspiracy going on in America? Yes, there is, right? He says that the heart of its appeal is not a new idea. It's the same old idea that the serpent whispered to Eve. So if we think about it, like when I put this together, I was thinking I was going to be done in one Sunday. This is like 4 weeks ago now. But it's the same old idea that the serpent whispered to Eve, right? We're dealing with deception again, right? What did the serpent? What's the first thing he did? He said to Eve. What's the first thing he did to Eve? Just tried to deceive. He was deceiving her, getting her to think and to question. Right, because we think it's because they ate the fruit that the fall of man happened. No. It started with the thought, and then that thought produced something. Right? That deception produced something. Right? What did the serpent whisper, right? Or this is what Kelly has, but the serpent whispered because that's what he does. He whispers, right? He whispered, "Ye shall be as gods." And Kelly was dealing with Judges on how people don't want a God. They don't want a king. They want to be able to have free reign and do whatever they want. Right? And this is one of the greatest deceptions that we deal with today, is we think that that temptation that happened back there, that deception that happened back in the garden, isn't relevant today, when it's more relevant today than it ever has been. We've just been deceived to think that it's not happening. Right? Think about that. It's a huge mind game. Right? We've been deceived that deception is no longer around. And we're going to get there, hopefully. Let's see. Yeah, the first thing that... no, we're going to keep going. So he has men live by ideas, and no idea in man's history has produced more evil than this one. And then he just says, man the God. That's what Kelly has in the book. Think about that. Men live by ideas, and no idea in man's history has produced more evil than that one. Man the God. Man puts himself above God. All right? Then he gives it man the predestined, man the central planner, man the director of the evolutionary process, man the maker and shaker of things on earth and in heavens. Right? He didn't want to hear or trust God's character. What'd you say? Nothing's changed, right? Yeah, nothing new under the sun. Right, so the lie has not changed one bit. Oh my God, it's already 10:32. I'm just going to I want to skip down my notes. Because I do really like this whole deception thing has really been kind of like in my spirit. All right, so I'm going to move on here. Kelly goes on to he has 1 Corinthians 6 in here, and that's where I'm going to jump to right now. So, do we know what 1 Corinthians is about? No? Okay, 6. Okay. It's Paul, right? Paul, he's dealing with his church, right? He's not dealing with people in the world, he's dealing with his church, right? They had issues. The Corinthian church, the church of Corinth had issues. But name a church that doesn't have issues. Every church has issues, right? Right?
No. We're overcomers.
But that church was dealing with carnality issues, right? They were dealing with the lusts of the flesh. And I'm just going to start reading. So 1 Corinthians 6:9, just for the sake of time. He says, do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit or have any share in the kingdom of God? And I was like, man, that's just like, it's kind of crazy, right? He's dealing with his church, right? And it's like going up to you and shaking you and saying, do you not know that if you keep living this way, you're not going to inherit the kingdom of God, right? He says this 6 times in this one portion of Scripture. And we know that 6 is the number of man, right? Which is human weakness, imperfection, right? And what's crazy is it stands right before the number of 7, which represents God and complete perfection, right? We just got done talking about the standard, right? The standard is Jesus. He's number 7. And Paul here is saying, guys, you can live as number 6, but you're never going to get to 7 if you keep living the way that you're living. You're always going to be a 6, right? And 6 is not going to inherit nothing, right? You're just going to keep living in the flesh, walking around in circles, right? And he's sitting there like, he's probably getting annoyed at this point, and he's like, guys, we've got to bring the standard up a little bit higher, because he's talking to the church. Because the church let the carnality of the world come into it. But it also means they're falling short, right? Let's see. And then I just want to go on the next verse, right? Kind of sums up the entire thing. He deals with deception. And I'm just going to read something. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but there's been like this video there's a reel going around on the internet about, it was just crazy, right? This pastor, asked AI what AI would do if it was the devil. Right? Anybody see that? Oh, I should have just played it. Because it's kind of like, it goes back to, I don't remember who played it. It might have been Pastor Dale played that Paul Harvey, whatever it was, yeah, about if I were the devil, this is what I would do. Yeah. And that was like 20 or 30 years ago. This is the modern version of, if I were the devil, this is what I would do. And it was crazy. It actually floored the pastor who was preaching the sermon. I guess I should have just played the video, but I have a summary of it. We'll just kind of go through it real quick. So this is a summary of the viral "If I Were the Devil" AI trend. Highlights a modern strategy of deception that mirrors the theme. And this also goes into, I don't really know about it, but it goes into the theme of C.L. Lewis' classic book. It's called The Screwtape Letters. Is anybody? Okay. But the core premise is that spiritual drift rarely happens through overt choices of dramatic rebellion. Instead, it occurs through a subtle, comfortable, and continuous erosion of values. He's dealing with the church, right? The strategy relies heavily on weaponization of convenience, entertainment, and modern technology. Right? Remember, when Paul Harvey did his thing, The world has changed so much since Paul Harvey when he did his thing, right? Rather than fighting faith directly, the goal is simply to redirect human attention, right? By filling people's hands with devices, right? Devices, right? Filling their calendars with endless obligations and their minds with digital noise, right? Like, think about it. I was just like, oh my God, this is me. I mean, I was honest with myself, right? And I said, holy smokes, like this is what is happening. This is the deception that's happening, because this is reality, right? Where was I going? With digital noise, they become too distracted, too tired, and too busy to maintain deep relationships, prayer lives, or absolute moral convictions. Using screens, notifications, and infinite scrolling to eliminate silence, ensuring individuals never have the quiet mental space required for deep reflection or prayer. So true, right? Like, I've fallen into this trap. Like, anybody, like, my thumb hurts sometimes because you're just flicking the screen. But it's so true, though. It's the truth. But it happens in the church. Or happening in the church. It's happening in the church. And it's a gradual normalization, right? It's the new norm, right? Slowly shifting culture and moral boundaries throughout media until concepts that were once shocking become standard. It's like celebrated entertainment is what he's saying, right? There's nothing really like, I mean, are there, like, yeah, things are shocking, but things are just so normal now. It's like, oh, all right, well, I guess, that was a shooting again. It's the new norm, Nothing is shocking anymore. We've become desensitized to that. It creates division and isolation, fracturing families and communities by fostering a culture of hypersensitivity and outrage, while replacing real, messy human accountability with online-only simulation. It's also convincing, it would convince society that spiritual warfare is an outdated myth, leading people to lower their guard against subtle, everyday compromise. It also said it would encourage people to remain morally good enough. 6. Right? Number 6, when you're number 6, you think you're morally good enough. But he's number 7, that's the standard. Right? Or religious by habit. So long as their inner hearts remain completely unchallenged and untransformed. Yep. Yep.
This goes along with what you just said. I just said something to Sister Fran the other day, and when I was reading, it's like AI, and I'm like, what does AI mean? And it means sudden or total destruction. And everything you're saying right there is just proof that that's what it amounts to, total destruction.
But that was just like a summary. I mean, if I could play the video, I would just play the video. I think the video has more value to it, but would that work if I just held it up to my mic or no? It would work? Yeah, let's just play it. I think it's worth it because deception is real. I don't want this to be a heavy like Sunday school. I just think we just need to understand the reality of what is happening, right? Okay. Okay, we can play for everybody. That's fine. That's deception right there, though, right? That is the truth. I was just about to say, he needs prayer right there, because that's how we think sometimes, though. Right? That's how right, you take your own, I'm not being deceived. Maybe you are, right? Then that's how the quarreling and the bickering start. I've got this thing figured out, right? I get the mic every week. I'm perfect, I think, right? I just got to get you to my level, right? No, I'm just joking, but that's how we think sometimes, though, right? And that's what the enemy wants us to do. He wants you to think you've got this whole thing figured out when we really don't, right? My wife says it all the time, right? What do you say all the time? Because I just forgot. Oh God, I go to church because, well, not I go to church, but I follow the Lord because I know I need a Savior. What's that?
I follow the Lord because I know I need a Savior, not because I'm perfect.
Exactly, right. And when we have that type of mind, not putting on, but that's the mindset we need to have. I'm not perfect, God, right? But please help me get to that number 7 we're striving for, because number 6 is not going to get. If you just want to stay at number 6, you might as well just quit now, because you're not going to inherit the promises of God. You're not going to win the race being a number 6, right? You're going to give up when you see that big hill, and you're not going to want to run up it, you know? Yep. All right, well, now that I butchered that, I guess we'll end it. Do you want to will you even play it maybe later or something? No? Or do you want me to just play it now? I'll play it now.